Australian New Wave is the name for the film movement that took place in Australia in the 1970s and 80s. It has also been called New Australian Cinema, Australian Film Renaissance, and the Australian Film Revival. It occurred because the production of Australian films began to slow down after World War II, eventually coming to a halt in the 1960s. Due to the importance of film to a nation's identity and well-being, the Gorton government increased funding for the arts, setting up the Australian Council for the Arts, the Australian Film Development Corporation, and the National Film and Television Training School. This school produced a large number of directors and filmmakers in a short period of time. The school managed to bring the Australian film industry to the world stage by flooding the nation with talented and energetic minds. Between 1970 and 1985, over 400 films were produced, thus creating a film renaissance. Although films in this time period were of all genres and styles, some of the common characteristics of many is a love of open spaces in the Australian outback, a straightforward narrative style, sudden violence, and very relaxed sexuality. A common plot point for many of these films is having to survive in the unforgiving Australian wild. Films that were based on this plot point were often called Outback Gothic, and include Wake and Fright, directed by Ted Kotcheff, Walkabout, directed by Nicholas Roeg, and The Cars That Ate Paris, directed by Peter Weir. These films portrayed indigenous people as dangerous pariahs. They also included scenes that showcased some of the many dangers of the country. The most well-known and successful Australian movie is Crocodile Dundee, directed by Peter Fairman. This movie is about an Australian bushman who travels to New York after falling in love with a girl named Sue. Dundee and Sue travel around New York and go on many amusing adventures. One of the best parts of this movie is the humor that arises when Dundee does not understand the different culture of New York City.
G'day. Big Dundee from Australia. How are you?
I'm fine, how are you?
Just going to town for a couple of days. Probably see you around.
Bye.
This romantic comedy was a worldwide phenomenon and made hundreds of millions of dollars. It is by far the most popular film from the Australian New Wave film movement.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
Another influential film in the Australian New Wave film movement was Mad Max. This film helped to really bring New Wave films to the mainstream. Directed by George Miller and produced by Brian Kennedy, this movie was the most profitable film of all time in 1979, and ended up being very popular with the critics. The story takes place in a futuristic society that is crumbling and is about a police pursuit man named Max Rokitansky. He gets tied up with a crazy bike gang and is involved with lots of high-speed pursuits and violent chases. He eventually realizes that the police force at the time is causing him to go crazy, so he takes things into his own hands. This, along with the murder of his family, caused him to truly become Mad Max. The film's numerous explicit scenes and extreme graphic violence caused some controversy in the critic community, but in the end, it was a huge success. A third film that had a large influence on Australian film culture was Dead Calm. This movie was directed by Philip Noyce and is considered the breakthrough film for actress Nicole Kidman. This movie is about a couple that goes on a vacation on a yacht in the Pacific Ocean. They find a man on a sinking ship and stop to help him, only to have him hijack their ship, leaving the husband behind on the wreckage. The wife must then find a way back to her husband to save him before his ship sinks. Critics loved the quality acting and genuine tension, but some thought that it was an unsettling hybrid of escapist suspense and the kind of pure trash that depends on dead babies and murdered dogs for effect. Even though it was not the largest box office success, Dead Calm showed that even small movies can truly affect the cinema landscape for years to come.